Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving right into a story that, honestly, gets misunderstood a lot. People tend to look at it as just this massive corporate case study, but at its core, it's a deeply human story. We're talking about the emotional journey of a hardworking kid from a small town who didn't have money, didn't have elite connections. What he did have was a dream, a pickup truck, and a heart that simply refused to give up. So today, we're exploring the unbelievable rise of Sam Walton and the giant retail empire he built, Walmart.
It really makes you wonder, right? How exactly does a boy with a pickup truck end up building a $500 billion empire? Born right before the Great Depression, Sam Walton grew up in a world where absolutely nothing was guaranteed. I mean, millions of Americans were losing their jobs, their homes. He wasn't born a billionaire. He definitely didn't go to some fancy business school, and nobody handed him a trust fund. So how in the world did he achieve such unprecedented success? Well, let's break it down.
Section 1. A boy and a truck. This is all about his early life and work ethic. Sam's story really begins with this incredible, almost military-style discipline that was completely forged by growing up during the Great Depression.
His wife, Helen Robson, was incredibly smart and confident. She basically laid out their life's mission with this one perfect quote: "We will build something big or die trying." Armed with this relentless work ethic, which he built up from doing childhood chores and waiting tables in college, a 26-year-old Sam took a massive leap. With just $5,000 of his own savings and a $20,000 loan from his father-in-law, he bought a small variety store in Newport, Arkansas. He didn't have big-time investors. He just had an absolute obsession with serving customers better than anyone else. He was the guy out there cleaning the floors, studying the competitors, and checking every single price tag himself.
So back then, the traditional retail mindset was kind of rigid. You wanted to make a big profit on a few items, say selling 100 shirts for a $5 profit each. But Sam, he completely flipped the script. He realized that if he drastically lowered prices, he'd earn the customer's unwavering trust. He didn't want to sell 100 shirts. He wanted to sell 10,000 shirts at a 50-cent profit each and just make it all up in volume. The store was a massive hit. But, plot twist, his landlord saw exactly how profitable it was, flat out refused to renew the lease, and literally took the store away so he could give it to his own son. Just like that, Sam lost everything.
All right, Section 2, the Bentonville Blueprint, starting over. Because after losing his first successful business, Sam absolutely refused to quit. He just packed up everything, moved to a quiet little town, and opened up a humble new store.
He had this absolute, downright obsession with the people walking through his doors. His whole philosophy boiled down to this: the customer is not just the reason for our success, the customer is our success. That was his golden thread. He wouldn't just wave and say hello. He'd literally walk customers over to the shelf, carry their bags out for them, and ask them exactly what they didn't like so he could fix it on the spot. He wasn't treating them like walking wallets. He was treating them like family. Now, let's jump to 1962. Sam noticed this massive gap in the market that literally every other big businessman was completely ignoring: rural America. We're talking small towns stuck with high prices, terrible selection, and completely bypassed by the large retail chains who only cared about the big cities. Investors actually laughed at him. They told him rural people just wouldn't buy much. But Sam took the risk anyway. He borrowed the money and opened the first ever massive Walmart discount city in Rogers, Arkansas. People walked in, saw these crazy low prices and the huge variety, and word of mouth absolutely exploded. It spread like wildfire.
Section 3, building the retail machine. Scaling logistics. This is where we move into the 1970s, and Sam goes from being this clever shopkeeper to the visionary architect of an unstoppable logistics engine. Seriously, just think about how far ahead of the curve this guy was. While all his rivals were still relying on slow, expensive third-party distributors, Sam was busy building his own private spiderweb of warehouses and trucks. And get this, in the late 1970s, before even massive Wall Street banks were fully computerized, Walmart was putting satellite dishes on the roofs of their stores. If someone bought a product down in Texas, the satellite beamed that data instantly to headquarters in Arkansas, and a private warehouse shipped a replacement directly to the store. We're talking military-level efficiency, literally decades ahead of the competition.
Like Sam famously said, retail is detail. And to fund all this hypergrowth, he made the really bold move to take the company public in 1972. The stock market injected millions of dollars into the company, which let them build even more of those high-tech warehouses. But what's genuinely amazing here is the stark contrast in his personal life. Despite this massive influx of cash, Sam maintained his extreme frugality. He didn't go out and buy a luxury car. No way.
He kept driving his beat-up Ford pickup and eating at cheap local diners. To him, every dollar saved was a dollar for the mission. Which brings us to Section 4, Scaling and Surviving Critics, Growth and Pushback. By the mid-'80s, the scale was explosive. But, as you might guess, with that massive scale came some inevitable pushback. And the criticisms were definitely loud. People were claiming the company was hurting Main Street and paying low wages. But look at how they responded. They didn't go out and launch these massive, flashy PR campaigns to argue their case. Instead, they relied on hard data, proving that in most areas, customers were actually saving 20 to 30% a year. And to address the wage criticisms, well, Sam vastly expanded the employee stock ownership program. By the end of the 1980s, more than 120,000 workers owned stock in the company. He turned thousands of hardworking employees into actual shareholders, and they just let the work speak for itself. And wow, the results of all that hard work were just historic. In 1985, Forbes put out its list of the richest people in America, and sitting right there at number 1 was Sam Walton, with a net worth of $2.8 billion. Yet the richest man in America still refused bodyguards, still lived in his modest house in Bentonville, and still wore a simple baseball cap while walking the aisles of his stores, asking his cashiers how they could improve. He called it discipline.
Section 5. A Giant's Lasting Legacy. Life after Sam. In 1992, just shortly after receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the man who fundamentally changed how the world shopped passed away.
A lot of people honestly thought the company would just collapse without him. But looking at the timeline, it proves he built this incredibly resilient, decentralized system, not just a cult of personality. I mean, in 1992, revenue was at $43 billion. And then look at this leap. By 1999, just 7 years later, it hit a staggering $100 billion. By 2002, $150 billion. The executives he trained, they simply protected the culture he built. They expanded internationally to places like Mexico, Canada, and the UK, adapting to local cultures while keeping that core promise alive. Low prices every single day.
And the thing is, they never stopped adapting. When Amazon and the massive e-commerce wave started threatening physical retail, they didn't just freeze up. Actually, they aggressively pivoted. They acquired Jet.com, they launched the Walmart Plus membership, and they turned their physical locations into these technology-driven smart stores packed with robotics and AI. They completely evolved into a digital service company, all without losing their fierce grip on that original low-price model Sam invented.
Which brings us to this absolutely mind-blowing number. In 2018, they crossed $500 billion in sales in a single year. $500 billion. Let that sink in. No retailer or tech brand had ever done that in a 12-month span. They became the world's largest private employer with over 2.3 million workers. And think about it, they were an essential service during the pandemic, keeping vital supply chains running when the rest of the world had to shut down. But amidst all those hundreds of billions of dollars, I want you to picture something for a second. The original, tiny Walton 5 and 10 store still stands today, right there in Bentonville, Arkansas. People still visit those narrow little aisles just to see Sam's old desk and his handwritten notes. It's this incredible contrast that really grounds this massive global giant right back into the dirt where it all started. No money, no power, just a dream to make things better for everyday people. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final question to chew on. What legacy will your everyday actions build? Sam Walton proved you really don't need to be born rich to change the world. You just need a plan, unbelievable discipline, and a reason that actually matters. If you apply that exact same underdog dedication to serving others in your own life, how far could you go? Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep building your own legacy.